The next segment, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what this is basically is the good are players that we're predicting are going to have a really good week coming up. The bad, obviously, players that we predict are going to have a bad week. And the ugly are those players that you may not want to play. They may look ugly on your roster, but they're probably going to produce this week. So give them a shot. Adam, why don't you kick us off? Who's your good player of the week?
So I'll start us off with Mr. Marlon Mack. Obviously, he's been a high production guy, but I don't think any of that changes this week. He's definitely getting the volume. He seems to be getting 20-plus touches every single week, and I don't really see that changing. Like I said, they've got an immaculate offensive line. Brissett has impressed, and they've got a lot of weapons around the board. They cannot just key on their running game. So they're playing Oakland this week, giving up 18.5 points per game to opposing fantasy running backs, who just gave up 211 rushing yards to the Minnesota Vikings, who we know can run the football, but so can Marlon Mack and the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, really the only downside for Mack is the lack of pass catching, and
right.
I don't know that it's going to matter in this matchup.
You know, he sees more than he did last year,
That's
though,
true.
so I think he definitely upticked from year over year. Now, obviously, they have Naeem Hines there, who's going to take... And does Jordan Wilkins take much of the passing game?
Jordan Wilkins generally doesn't play much as long as
Right.
Marlon Mack plays, so I wouldn't think
So,
he's a concern.
It's still there. There's still the availability for it, but we'll see how they use him going forward. But I absolutely agree. The running volume is there, and he's averaging 4.5, 5 yards a carry. So
Yeah, he
definitely
could have 20 rushing attempts.
Yes.
No problem.
So my good player of the week is Sammy Watkins, and I know if you have him, you're probably playing him, and you might be a little frustrated because he's gone 2 weeks in a row and hasn't done much. But the ironic thing is he's getting all the targets. I mean, he's getting as many targets as Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson put together.
Yeah.
He's just not – he hasn't had the fortune to turn them into touchdowns, probably because he's drawing number one coverage with Tyreek Hill still out. However, they're playing the Detroit Lions. They're not terribly good against the pass. No one's good against Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So I would stick with him. I really think he's going to have a bounce back week this week. He's due. I think they're actually going to maybe even try to give him the ball a little bit more because you want to keep everyone happy. And I'm predicting a couple of TDs and over 100 yards receiving. Wouldn't surprise me.
And I think if you're the Sammy Watkins owner, you're just happy that he's still healthy, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, we know we've seen in the past that he's been such a risk at wide receiver, but it's just nice to see him on the football field.
Mm-hmm.
It's that cold blood.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll start with my good player, Kerryon Johnson, staying on the same field here. He's playing Kansas City. They allowed Mark Ingram 3 touchdowns last week. Kerryon has been getting better. He's been getting more snap share, and I'm assuming Detroit's going to be down because, like you said, no one can stop Kansas City, so they're going to have to rely on his pass-catching ability, and they're probably going to be catching up. So that puts him in the game more often than someone like Ty Johnson, you would hope.
Right.
So I think he's going to have a good week, and you can fire him up.
I think that's a good call. All right, let's go on to the bad. Adam, get us kicked off here. Who's your bad player this week?
I hate to say this because I do own him in a league, but
I do too.
I'm going to go with David Johnson. He's actually been, and maybe you can say this in just a little bit. I don't know, you sent me an odd stat of a comparison between him and Devonta Freeman. But anyway, he's playing the 4th-ranked rushing defense in the NFL in Seattle, who was just gashed by Kamara last week. We know that was actually more through the air. I think he had 9 for 92 through the air.
Yeah.
And obviously David Johnson is that way, but the offense just isn't quite as potent as it can be probably in the future. So I think the more of an expectation I have is maybe a week like he had against Baltimore, maybe very touchdown dependent to save his week. I just don't see the production being there for him this week.
Yep. With that said, he could have touchdowns.
He could
be
be
just fine.
He could be.
Don't bank on it.
He seems to eke one out every week, but I agree with you. It's this week, so it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, those comebacks from the Cardinals really they make you feel uncomfortable until the 4th quarter, and then you start being okay with your players.
Yeah, you start breathing again.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, my bad player prediction this week is not going to make too many people happy because a lot of people spent a whole lot of fab budget to pick him up. But mine's Wayne Gallman. The Redskins are pretty good against the run.
How dare you.
I know. The Redskins are pretty decent against the run, and they're pretty weak against the pass. So I'm expecting Daniel Jones to come out, fire the ball around. He looked good doing it last week. Gallman is no Saquon Barkley. And I just feel like he's going to struggle. I don't think he's going to get as much opportunity because he's going to struggle. So, I'm predicting maybe 12 touches for 60 yards. He might luck out and get a touchdown if someone's tackled at the 1. But even then, Daniel Jones is probably a better running back, in my opinion. So he may still not get the goal line carry.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I agree. Very similar to David Johnson. I think they're almost touchdown dependent this week. So
Right. Right.
All right, and I will go with my bad player for the week as Carson Wentz. A lot of people.
To hear it, baby.
Well, Carson Wentz. A lot of people really liked him this year, and he's been okay, but he hasn't been really what you've expected. But this week he's playing Green Bay, who have allowed. Here's their last 3 games: 213 yards with 0 touchdowns, 230 yards with 1 touchdown, and 228 yards with 0 touchdowns. I know that it was not the caliber of Carson Wentz. But Carson Wentz is definitely missing Deshaun Jackson, may have a banged-up Alshon Jeffrey. Dallas Goedert is out, so a lot of his weapons are gone. And to top all that off, he's playing on a Thursday, which is typically bad news for an offense and good news for a defense. So I would try to steer away from playing Carson Wentz if you have that option.
I hope you're right. I have Green Bay defense.
Okay.
So I'm pulling for you on that one. Okay, let's move to the last part of this. This is the ugly. Again, these are players that we're predicting are going to have a good week. They just might look ugly on your roster. So, Adam, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so this guy may come as a surprise because I'm assuming that you may have started him the first 3 weeks, but my guy's Joe Mixon, and he's looked absolutely hideous for the first 3 weeks. Last week he was saved by a touchdown. He looked a little bit better, but that offense, I think they're ranked last in rushing and yards per game basis. So I think our expectation for Joe Mixon is going to be almost matchup based at this point, which is exactly why I have him in this ugly position because he plays the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 28th against the run and 28th in points allowed. So I definitely feel like the touchdown, he's not touchdown dependent, but I can definitely see them leaning on him in this game.
Well, we were talking about this earlier. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a really bad defense, but they're good for fantasy, which is kind of interesting. And to top that off, Andy Dalton, there's the thing that's primetime Andy Dalton is not an Andy Dalton you want to start. And this is a primetime game. So that to me says they're probably going to try to get the ball in the running back's hands if things go south. So I agree. He's probably, at the very least, he's going to have a lot of volume.
Right.
Which if you have volume, that means you have opportunity.
Well, and they just cannot stop a nosebleed, it seems like this year. You're right. They're not winning football games for some odd reason. Their fantasy value is higher than it should be probably, but I agree. Definitely a plus matchup for him in this week.
Yep.
It's sad that he's an ugly.
Yeah.
It is. So my ugly player this week is Justin Jackson. The Chargers are playing Miami. That might be enough said. But they're probably going to be up on Miami early, so we may be able to expect more of a ground attack, especially late in the game. Jackson's been kind of getting in there later. So I think he's going to probably get a lot of garbage time production. He could even maybe eke out a couple of touchdowns. So I think he could have a really good week this week. And, if Melvin Gordon is truly coming back, it might actually motivate Eckler and Jackson to have a little bit even better game than what they've been putting up. So.
All right, well, we're going to go from one ugly former Sooner to the next. My ugly player this week is Sterling Shepard. Obviously, he had a little bit of a breakout last week, but when you have a new quarterback, things tend to get skewed, and they don't know whether or not that was a ghost of Daniel Jones or if that's what to actually expect. But they're playing Washington this week, who allowed 154 yards and a touchdown to Deshaun Jackson, 269 yards and 3 touchdowns to Dak Prescott, and 231 yards and 3 touchdowns to Mitchell Trubisky. Those are not great offenses. I mean, obviously, Dallas has been pretty good, but aside from that, you said that they couldn't stop a nosebleed. I feel like that's kind of how Washington has been. And, Shepard and I think also Evan Ingram are probably going to be hyper-targeted due to no Saquon, and you have Wayne Gallman, who's not that prolific pass catcher like Saquon. So I think those two are going to be big benefits of that. So I see Shepard as having a pretty good game.
Good call. All right. Well, that'll do it for the good, the bad, and the ugly segment. You guys got any last comments?
Good luck this week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we like to mention take your Thursday night guys out of your flex position if you can.
Good point.
Yep.
Good point. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to our podcast today. We'd love to hear from you. So please send us an email at dynastyguysff@gmail.com. That's dynastyguysff@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at dynastyguysff. That's at dynastyguysff. Hey, thanks again for listening, and please join us for our next podcast. See ya.
Appreciate it.
Bye.